Welcome to the Crazy Chicken People podcast. If you're crazy about chickens, then you're in the right place. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crazy Chicken People podcast. Always appreciate having you here. Today's show is going to be a little bit different than most. Usually I pick a topic, something that I can offer some advice on, whether it's something I've dealt with myself or even something that was new that I kind of had to dig in and learn about. But today I went a different direction. I'm going to be talking about some changes that I've made recently with my flocks and how that unexpectedly had a tremendous positive change for not just myself, but for a chicken that I had nearly given up hope on. Also going to talk about a couple of very small chickens that I have that have recently claimed a spot in my heart. So if you're here for helpful tips on caring for your flock, potentially you're going to get some of that. And if you enjoy stories about cute chickens, you'll definitely get some of that as well. And if you care to hear about a chick issue that has me completely baffled, I will definitely fill you in on that story. Also have a cool podcast announcement, something coming up in the future that I'm pretty excited for, and I'll let you guys know about that at the end. So, a few episodes back, I talked about some chickens that I had lost. And of course, there was nothing good about that. It made for a tough few weeks, but I had to try to find some lesson to take away from that. Realizing that I can no longer keep a free-range flock was one takeaway. But after really doing some reflecting on what had happened and thinking over my entire chicken situation, I kind of had like a realization. I had become so fascinated with chickens. I think I let myself get spread out a little too thin, trying to do too much. I had set these breeding goals that I really wanted to get into next year and constantly working on trying to get that full range of colors in my egg basket, taking in stray roosters because I just didn't like the thought of them ending up somewhere where they wouldn't have a chance to thrive. Building all the coops, even doing this show was an extension of just how into chickens I had gotten. And what I've realized is that it was all taking away from what it was that ultimately brought me to love chickens so much. And that is just hanging out with them and watching them. Spending some time down there just stress-free, enjoying being in the chicken yard. So I made the decision that I was going to thin my flock out a little bit so that I could spend less time doing all the work that comes along with having, I think I was up to 75 birds at one point, and allow me to just spend more time hanging out and enjoying them because that's what I really love. Now, of course, losing chickens to predators was not the way I wanted to go about thinning my flock out, but that did play into it, of course. But on a more positive note, I was able to rehome some of my chickens with people that I knew would give them a good home. I just didn't want to think about them, going someplace where they weren't going to receive the type of care that they had become accustomed to. So with all that, I did get myself down to a much more manageable number, and that led me to be able to consolidate a couple of my flocks into one coop, which is really nice. It's great to be able to go in there and see so many of the birds that I do enjoy. I'm not spread out as much trying to make sure that so many coops have good food and water and are clean and all those things. So I ended up moving my Americana flock, which included 4 hens and my rooster, Atlas, in with a group that I had living together in my largest coop, which was made up of 5 hens that had been gifted to me, including McNugget. She's I don't even know that I'm pronouncing this right, a Mille de Fleur, which I found out means 1,000 flowers. Kind of makes sense because their feathering is very spotted and I guess could kind of be seen to look like a lot of flowers. But she is just the sweetest little bird. I was never really interested in having that type. We already have silkies. I don't know if those two can live together. And I thought surely they would not do well, living with a flock of full-size birds. But she was living with 4 other full-size hens when she was given to me and was doing just fine. But I did have some concerns about, adding her and all the Americanas together. These other large birds that weren't familiar with her might pick on her. Who knows what might happen, but I had some worries there. And I had a couple other birds that were living with those 5. My Ayam Samani, also not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Her name is Butters, and Big Baby that was hatched and raised by my previous barn hen that was part of my free rangers. So when I put them together, usually I do this at night. I think I've talked about this before. The old sneak them onto the roost and no one will be the wiser in the morning. That's always my go-to, but I didn't do that this time. And my reasoning for this was, for one, I was moving a full flock over, right? A rooster and 4 hens. This wasn't just sneaking in a couple of birds. So I just didn't feel like that might go very well at night. I thought there might be too much commotion, and then I would just leave and potentially not see them in the morning if it was a work day and not know how things were going. So I just didn't like that idea. So instead, me and the boys, we went and gathered up all the Americanas. Between the 3 of us, we carried all 5 of them over to the new coop, and we got them in there at one time. I thought that would be the best thing, make sure the rooster is in there. He's going to help keep things in order. And I thought it'll either go really well or really bad right off the bat, and we could react to it at that time and get them back out of there. So put them in there. There was the initial 1 peck of the first bird that got into the run, and then the standoff, our boss hen, Bandit, who had already been occupying that run, and Atlas. So I thought there was going to be a big scuffle. Atlas ran into the middle, kind of shooed his hens over to one side of the run, kept them separated. So there was no initial fighting of any kind. And I just decided, okay, I'm going to stay in here for a little while, make sure McNugget's okay, make sure this doesn't break out into just something really bad. And it didn't. It was cool. I sat in there, just kind of kicked back for a while. I think I was in there for a couple of hours, and it was going great. In fact, the coolest thing that happened was my I Am Samani Butters, who I named after the very easily rattled character on South Park. She was doing wonderful, but that had not always been the case with her. Since the day I brought her home, she was a 2-day-old chick. Her and, as it turned out, her 3 brothers, I got 4 of those chicks straight run, and because I'm lucky, I ended up with just 1 hen. They had no chill. I mean, anytime I went into their brooder for anything, to feed, to water, just to try to have some time with them, they would go crazy. I had never seen anything like it. And that never faded. She really never settled down. I ended up rehoming those 3 roosters at some point because I didn't really have a good reason to keep them around. But I did find some people that were very excited to have that breed of rooster on their farm. But Butters, for her entire life, she's just not had an easy time living in a coop or connecting with other chickens, was very resistant to being picked up or, having any sort of one-on-one time with me. It had me kind of bummed. I mean, they're cool chickens. I was happy to have one in our flock, but was just never able to connect with her. So my biggest worry joining these 2 flocks was, how was she going to react? And at first, I thought it was going to be all bad. She immediately ran into the coop as soon as we brought those Americanas in, and she stayed in there for like 10 minutes, just squawking away. And I'm sitting there like, okay, hopefully she settles down. I'll go in there and I'll grab her and we'll go from there, see what happens. And I'm figuring at any moment she's going to run out of there and just be spinning circles all over the run. She used to try to, jump up and like get through the wire fence trying to get out of there. But she came out. She didn't freak out at all. She was actually the first one to go over and start mingling with all the Americanas, very lightly, just kind of getting into their space, pecking around near them. And as I'm watching this, I'm just like waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? I know at any moment she's just going to totally lose it, and that I would have to jump in there and break things up and probably remove her from the coop again. But that didn't happen at all. And ever since I've put those 2 flocks together, it's been like a night and day difference with her. I've read about these birds, and everything I see says that, they're very calm, they're a very docile bird, easily handled, which had not been my experience. But somehow, bringing all those birds together and her now living in a larger flock, I mean, she is just totally chill, very sweet. It's just been an amazing turnaround. And her behavior actually kind of represents the overall vibe of that coop now. During the day when everyone's in the run, there's no fighting over resources. I'm not seeing anyone get picked on. McNugget is doing totally fine in there. Now she's still, kind of has to be in the back when getting treats. She's not able to run up there and grab those first few pieces of whatever it is that hits the ground. I think that's always been the case for her, but she's doing very well. I wouldn't say they're all best friends yet. Atlas is trying his best, I would say, to pay attention to both groups and have those other hens kind of accept him. But it's going really well. The only thing left to resolve now is that the Americanas have not gone into the coop to sleep yet. And luckily it hasn't rained in this last week or so, at least not much, not at night. But I do need to get them eventually going into that coop to sleep and using the nesting boxes. The hens have not been using the nesting boxes yet. They've been laying just kind of randomly around the run. But I'm not real worried about that. I think after a few more days, I might even start putting them into the coop at night and see if that helps them take to it. But, overall, I feel really good that these things are going to work themselves out. They almost always do. But I just can't tell you the relief, having that one less coop to worry about, not being so focused on, do I have the right rooster with the right hens so I'm getting the right babies down the road? I'm just much more relaxed on that and really finding that enjoyment again. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because, it can be hard to make a sudden change like that. You've got a plan. Maybe it's something you've been working towards for a long time. I think it never hurts to stop and reevaluate. Ask yourself, am I getting the results that I wanted out of this? And I wasn't. It created a lot more work that I wanted to be doing. My time down there is limited, and I didn't want to have to spend it all cleaning up chicken poop. For anyone out there that's maybe struggling with their current situation, but you think that you need to stay on this road because that was your intentions, I guess I would just say, take another look at it, reevaluate, make sure that at the end of the day, everything you're doing is making you happy. Because I think that's what this is all about, right? I mean, I know we have chickens because we like the eggs, but certainly that's not it. I think for the most part, we love the way these birds make us feel. That comes by just hanging out with them and watching them. So I just wanted to share that perspective and also talk about this chick that I have. I mentioned a while ago that I've been raising some chicks for somebody. I started out with 10. One did not make it through that first week. So down to 9, 5 silkies and 4 olive eggers. They're doing great. Everyone seems to be very healthy. I want to say they're just over 5 weeks now, kind of starting to feather out. But one of the silkies, it's like it stopped growing. I would say that it's about the same size now that it has been since it's been about 2 weeks old. And I know silkies develop a little bit slower, but she's living with 5 of her sisters that were all hatched on the same day. They are well taller than her. They're much further along in development. This little one is starting to feather out, which is kind of funny to see on such a small chick, but just not growing. And I don't get it. I know that there's the failure to thrive that can happen with chicks, but that's going to typically result in death. But she's very healthy. I mean, she's very active, seems happy, eats, drinks plenty, just staying super tiny, to the point that I was getting worried that she was going to get trampled by the other chicks that she was living with. Of course, the olive eggers are getting much larger than the silkies, but not so much that I think there's any danger there with them being together. But this little girl was just, she's knee high to these olive eggers. And anytime they got stirred up or, there was a little ruckus in there, I did see her getting run over. So felt like I needed to separate them, which I did. They were ready for a larger brooder anyways, but I couldn't move this little one over there. I need to come up with a name for her. I haven't named them because they're not my birds and I'm already too attached to them, but I'm going to have to come up with something special for her. I even called the breeder that they came from, and she was kind of like, yeah, that is weird. I guess there is kind of a dwarfism thing that can occur. It seems pretty rare. Or maybe she's a late bloomer. We'll see. I think within a few weeks, if she hasn't really sprouted, I'll know that it's some sort of a genetic defect, and maybe she's just going to stay really small, which would be kind of cool. But I want her to be able to have a good life, and live with other chickens and not be in any physical danger. So we'll just have to see how that goes. I did have to go pick up a couple more chicks that are now my chicks to live with her because didn't want her to be alone. And she did take to them very quickly, made friends. I left a couple of the other silkies in there for a little while just to help with the transition, but I couldn't do that for too long. So she's in there with a couple Russian Orloff chicks, which I don't have any of yet, so that's kind of exciting. But we'll see how she does. Eventually, I think the Russian Orloffs will start to outpace her, and I'll be back in that same situation where she's living with birds that are much too big for her, but I'll just have to deal with it, I guess, a few weeks at a time. Unless she hits that growth spurt. Could happen. I'll keep you guys updated on that one because I just find it really interesting. And then one quick announcement. Dating back to, I think, my first or second episode, I mentioned another chicken podcast that I really love, and that is Bok Talk. Don't know if any of you guys listen to that. If you do have extra time in your week for more chicken podcast, I still recommend it. It's a great show. I continue to stay current on it. But the point is, I've actually been in touch with her. We've had some emails back and forth, and she's going to have me on her show. In fact, I'm scheduled to interview with her next week. So super excited and also very nervous. I don't know what her turnaround time on episodes is, but when I know the date of the release of that episode, we'll definitely let you guys know. Would really appreciate it if you check that one out and just check out her podcast in general. It is a great resource for information about caring for chickens. I really enjoy it. But that was it for this week. Just wanted to share some of the things going on with my flock. A couple unique scenarios that have helped me to help a couple of my chickens unexpectedly, which was awesome. Also gave me the confidence to know that if I do need to merge flocks together, it can be done successfully, and doing it at night isn't the only option. So I was very happy about that. And, guys, if anyone out there has dealt with a chick that was late to develop or completely failed to develop but continued to live, I'd love to hear about it. I could really use some help on this one. I'd like to get an idea of what the future holds for her. So if y'all shoot me an email, that would be awesome. Other than that, you guys have a great week, and I'll talk to you again soon.